This is a 2020 Harley-Davidson Road King Standard. I've borrowed it here from the sales team at Tallahassee Harley-Davidson, and today I'm going to do a walk around, test ride, and review. Let's jump in. So if you're in the market for an American-made touring bike, you're probably considering one of Harley-Davidson's 4 big touring models. And your choices are a Road King, a Street Glide, which has a classic Harley-Davidson Batwing fairing, the Road Glide, which has the frame-mounted shark nose fairing, or one of the electric glides, either the Ultra Classic or the Ultra Limited, which is similar to the Street Glide in that it still has a Batwing fairing, but it also comes with a tour pack. The Ultra Limited comes with lower fairings and some other bells and whistles. But if you're just looking for a bike that can chew up the miles, get you from A to B comfortably and in good time, and you don't need all the bells and whistles, chances are the bike that's going to be grabbing your attention is this Road King. This particular Road King is far from a stock option that you would find on the sales floor. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at what makes this unit special. So the first thing you probably notice about this particular bike, and the first thing that I definitely notice about this particular bike, are these huge, out of nowhere 18-inch Ape Hanger handlebars. They are just absolutely massive, towering pieces of handlebars, and they are not necessarily unusual to see anymore. They're definitely becoming more and more popular, but they're not necessarily what you would assume and expect to find on a bike. And most people, when they look at them, if they've never sat on a bike with, Ape Hangers or tall handlebars and never known anyone who rode a bike with them, they probably think, how in the world could that ever be comfortable? But if you talk to people that actually ride a bike with Ape Hangers on them, they will tell you the exact opposite, myself included. Now, I only have 10-inch mini Apes on my bike, but they were an immediate improvement to the ergonomics and comfort of my Street Glide as soon as I put them on. And sitting on this Road King, I gotta tell you, they're really not uncomfortable. My hands have a nice hang to them. They're right up here, just a little bit, higher than my shoulders. And I don't notice any extra fatigue or muscle strain just to keep my hands up here on top of these bars. And as has been mentioned, bikes like the Road King are meant to be long road trip, interstate riding bikes. And so you kind of have to think to yourself a little bit of common sense. People wouldn't be putting these bars on their bikes if they weren't comfortable and if they weren't functional in a, comfortably ergonomic way. So, Ape Hanger handlebars, uncomfortable? Not to me and not to a lot of people that put them on their bikes. There's some other features on this Road King that lend themselves to being the perfect touring and interstate riding bike. Other than the handlebars, obviously you've got this massive windshield which has Harley-Davidson's quick release attachment hardware on it, which means it doesn't have to be on all the time. It takes less than 5 seconds to pop it on, pop it off, so you can have that interstate touring bike look where you've got the windshield on it, but you can also pop it off to make it look a little bit more sleek, get rid of the big piece of plastic that's in front of it, and give you a little bit more of that cool in-town look as well. The next thing to think about if you want to be on a bike for a few hours at a time, doing a few hundred miles in a day, is how comfortable is the seat. And I gotta tell you, I am always impressed when I sit on top of one of Harley-Davidson's touring bikes, because sometimes, people might expect that the factory seat's not going to be that great. It might be one of the first things you upgrade. And sure, a lot of people do throw on a Saddleman or a custom stitched seat or whatever for their bike, but these seats that come stock with these Harleys, they really are pretty comfortable. Taking a look behind me, I can't say that the passenger would be crazy comfortable for more than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'd probably put a backrest on it, and I've seen guys even throw tour packs on the back of their Road Kings. But if you just need to do like an hour quick trip, you need to go to dinner, grab lunch or whatever, even the passenger seat's going to have enough, space and support for someone to jump on behind you. And of course, an important consideration, if you're going to be taking a trip, you're probably not just going to bring the clothes on your back in a backpack. You're probably going to want to bring along some luggage with you. Just like with all of Harley-Davidson's touring bikes, you do get the standard size saddlebags, which since 2014 have offered this one-touch close-open system, which is great. Definitely an upgrade from the previous system, which I have on my bike. If I could put these bags on my bike like that, then I would. And as I mentioned before, you do have the docking hardware for any of the other accessories you might want to put on the back of this bike in particular. I'm thinking, a sissy bar or a backrest, probably a luggage rack here on the back so you can strap another bag on it, or if you really want to go all out and do the full touring look but not have to put a fairing on it, then you could absolutely put a tour pack on here, no problem, and you'd have plenty of luggage room for those long trips. So upon closer inspection of the saddlebags for that last little segment that I showed you, there is a Harley-Davidson Stage 1 street tuner in the bag, which tells me that this particular bike has had the Stage 1 treatment done to it. The The stage 1 treatment includes 3 different parts. You get slip-on mufflers to give you a little less back pressure, a little more free flow coming out of the exhaust so that you get more power out of the motor. It's got a stage 1 high flow intake on it. Those are the 2 parts that go into a stage 1 upgrade, and then you do get the tune to make sure that the computer and the engine management is doing everything that it can do with fuel management, etc. So you get the most power out of the motor itself, but also out of those 2 sets of upgraded parts that you add to it. And of course, since I mentioned it's got the Reinhardt slip-ons, let's go ahead and start it up, give it a few revs. Let's hear how this thing sounds. So as I mentioned, there's not really a whole lot more to the bike other than the bike itself. So the only thing I've got left to do is start it up, take it out on the road, see how she rides. All right, guys, here we go. That 2020 Road King with these big bars. So these handlebars are definitely sort of the centerpiece of this particular bike. And I haven't had a chance to hear from any of the sales team about why a 2020 was turned back in with just a few thousand miles on it, but a lot of work done to it. And I can only hope that the rider found the bike that they wanted, and then thank them for making this one available to someone, because this thing is just sick looking. Every time I float the idea of buying a different bike to my wife, I always ask about, you know, would you be up for a different color? What do you think about this color, that color? Black. It's gotta be black. And definitely can't fault her for that, because a black Harley, it just looks right. Ooh, there's that Milwaukee 8 107 doing its work. There we go. If you watched any of my reviews before, and if you've seen me on a 107, you know that I just absolutely love these Milwaukee 8 motors. I just think they're punchy. I think they're really, really torquey. And they're just a lot of fun to ride. Which isn't to say that, like the twin cam in my Street Glide, it doesn't give me the power that I want, because it does. But Milwaukee 8s are just something else. So yeah, being on the bike with these 18-inch bars, this is actually really comfortable. It doesn't feel unnatural, doesn't feel strained, doesn't feel weird, and it's certainly not uncomfortable. And I know a lot of people, when they see, again, these bars on bikes, or if they're thinking about upgrading their bars, they're always worried about, am I going too high? Are they gonna, is it gonna be uncomfortable? Is it gonna hurt my shoulders or my elbows? A, B, C. And the fact of the matter is, these 18-inch bars are actually really, really comfortable. And I say that about Harleys, pretty much any Harley. If you watch any of my videos, I describe the majority of the bikes that I ride and test ride as being really comfortable. And, that's not an accident. Harley-Davidson have been at this for going on 120 years now. If anybody should know how to make a bike comfortable for a rider, it should be Harley-Davidson. And, fact of the matter is they do. Right? This seat, my seating position, really, really comfortable. I'm upright. I feel supported. I don't feel like there's extra weight or pressure on my lower back or on my hips. If you've ever ridden for even more than just a couple hours at a time, those are usually a couple spots where you're going to start to feel some road fatigue, and I just don't get any of that because these seats are comfortable. It's like the seats are holding you more so than you're just sitting on them. These footboards are the perfect length and width for me. That's going to vary, if you're going to wear boots, or if you've got much bigger feet than me. I'm a 10.5. Maybe your experience will vary a little bit, but you can definitely always change your running. You can definitely always change your floorboards. That's not a problem. And I'm sure you can hear these Reinhardts are sick sounding slip-ons. They are just slip-ons. There was no full exhaust upgrade, but the Reinhardts by themselves, they are growly and punchy, and not overwhelmingly so, right? This is not an obnoxious sounding bike. Woo! And it does get up and go quite a bit. You talk to anyone who put a stage 1 on their bike. I've got a stage 1 on my Street Glide. Stage 1
is always worth the money, period. You get a completely different running bike after you put a stage 1 on it, you know. Changing the intake, making sure the motor can get more air, that's a big deal. Changing the exhaust, ensuring that it can put out more exhaust and therefore complete more cycles in a given amount of time, that's a big deal. And then changing your fuel and air management with your engine tuning that they do on a stage 1, that's all a big deal. And when you add all 3 of those additions and upgrades up, you get the stage 1 and you get pretty considerable power and torque gains. And you know, I always talk about how Milwaukee 8s from the factory are already pretty punchy. You do anything to that motor, it's going to be even more fun. To the point where, you know, there are people that are upgrading and building out bikes with Milwaukee 8s, and they're getting ridiculous horsepower and torque numbers. You know, I'm talking 130, 140, 150. There are guys putting in stage 4s or doing 131s, and that's a completely different build by itself. But the fact of the matter is, the architecture and design for these motors is ridiculously potent. And there's something to be said about this just stripped back Road King look. You know, I think the Road King and the Softail Deluxe visually, with of course, you know, the exception of a couple frame related differences, but just visually from the front, the Softail Deluxe and the Road King, I think, really do sort of evoke that essential or that quintessential vintage motorcycle look. And putting on some 18-inch bars and some chrome just absolutely makes this Road King scream just old school Harley Davidson biker cool. And you know, some people are really into that. Some people are not really into that. I find it actually kind of charming. I think there's something cool about it. And when it goes as quick as this one, when it sounds as good as this one sounds, it's pretty hard to complain. Alright guys, I'm pulling back into Harley Davidson. Alright y'all, pulling back into Tallahassee Harley Davidson. That concludes my walk around, review, and test drive of this 2020 Harley Davidson Road King with some sick 18-inch Ape Hanger bars on it. If you're curious and want to know more about this bike or any of the bikes that I feature on my channel, head to TallahasseeHarley.com. And as always, thanks for watching. I'm the Two Wheel Teacher, and until next time, I will see you on the road.